Hello and welcome to Mediatrocities. My name is Lew Ojeda, and with me I have.
You have Thai Pie, al- yeah, also known as Tyler Pistorius, but Thai Pie. Well, we'll keep it here just because it's less to say than Tyler Pistorius.
Oh, okay. All right. Tai Pai is a very good friend, an actor and filmmaker. He's been in a number of shorts and movies, and is a quite the connoisseur of movies, both good and bad, along with me. And so we, in this special podcast, are going to cover the Razzie nominations that have just come up and they're going to be announced next week. We're filming this on March 4th, so it'll be next week. They'll announce them. And we're going to go through our choices of of who we would choose in each category, what film we would choose in each category, and also we'll openly discuss the most undeserved nominations and the snubs, if you will, of those persons and object or things in films that should have been nominated but were not. And I guess the first question in dealing with this is why do this? Why cover the Razzies? And my feeling about this is that the this is a, an organization that's a little bit more down to earth to us than the Oscars, because the Oscars are chosen and selected by elitists, people who are in the Academy. And of course, you have to be, nominated to be in the Academy. For the Razzies, it's basically for the rest of us who pay $40 a year and then $25 subsequently in each subsequent year in order to be in it. And so I feel it might be in a more direct form for us to choose, what bad movies were out there, because hey, we had to pay to go and see them, right, Tyler?
Yeah.
Well, in most cases, but
The thing is, like most cases, yes, people do have to go and pay to see these. Actually, we did end up having to pay to see most of these either through rentals or through a subscription service as well.
right.
Actually, I think pretty much no. That actually no, that counts for all of them. All the nominees that I've seen. Um, yeah, they had to be paid. There had to be some sort of payment for,
Yeah.
or some kind of subscription service. So so you actually are correct.
And in the case for some of mine, they were I'm on a free trial for some of them, so technically I don't pay for them as of yet. But
Work in the system. Work in the system.
yes, that's right, exactly. You do what you can, man. You do what you can in this economy.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
The first couple of things I want to bring up, because the Razzies were criticized this year for nominating Ryan Kira Armstrong for Firestarter, which was uh, which was plausible. Yeah, it definitely there was it's definitely troubling to nominate somebody under the age of 18. So they changed the rules now. You have to be 18 or older to be nominated for a Razzie, and I think that's a good rule.
Hmm.
Bruce Willis's nominations and I assume his wins, I can't remember offhand, they were rescinded because of his diagnosis for aphasia. Now it's transgressed now into even further dementia. The one thing is, we don't, for in the case of Bruce Willis, we don't get the news that he has aphasia when he's making these movies. There's not an indicate there's but his health report isn't made public, and in fact, that idea, of making, health reports public is not something that Hollywood likes to do. It's, certainly, actors and actresses, they don't want to do that because they want to stay employed. I
Hmm.
totally understand that. So at least the Razzies, as soon as they found the information for this, or got the blowback for it, They didn't wait 50 years like the Oscars did for Sacheen Littlefeather just weeks before she died in
Yeah.
order to apologize to her for what, transgressed on the Oscars,
Right, exactly. Yeah, and regarding the nominations, yeah, Ryan Kira Armstrong. I did not see Firestarter, but I did see a movie that she did appear in. It was a very small appearance. It was It Chapter 2, and she seems like a really good actress. And as for Bruce Willis, yeah, with the alopecia, not alopecia, aphasia,
aphasia. Yeah.
aphasia, and then following up with the dementia. Yeah, I think rescinding both of those nominations was a very good idea and a good gesture on their part. I mean, they shouldn't have been nominated to begin with. With the Razzies, I can be a little bit more sympathetic because they didn't get the actual medical reports for Bruce Willis. Now, the people who who had Bruce Willis come in and act in these movies that he got nominated for, they knew and they took advantage of him anyway. So shame on them.
Yeah.
Ryan Kira Armstrong should not have been nominated to begin with. I mean, that is kind of cruel to nominate somebody who is, under the age of 18, especially because she's not in charge of the script. She's not handling the direction or anything like that. So,
yeah, we're gonna talk more examples of exactly what you just brought up of people who are being nominated who it was beyond their control because of other circumstances. We'll talk about that later. Right now, what I want to do, we're going to start off with the best part, actually for each of us, is what I call the sanity gift, and
yes.
that is the one film that Tyler and I both chose, where we instructed the other person not to watch it. This is from the nominees of Worst Picture. And so in order to save them some sanity. And so I'm going to begin. My sanity gift to Tyler is a film called Good Morning. Morning is spelled M-O-U-R-N, M-O-U.
RNING. Yes.
Thank you very much.
No worries, no worries.
And I guess that's important in a little bit of context with this, because it's the story of the worst day in the life of an actor named London Clash, who's played by Colson Baker, better known as Machine Gun Kelly, the rapper Machine Gun Kelly. And he receives a text message from his girlfriend, played by Megan Fox, one morning. Because of that message, she leaves Good Morning. He feels there's something wrong, and so he's going to try and track her down along with his scumbag friends to go and find out exactly what's going on. And if you're wondering why doesn't he simply call? Well, it's because one of his idiot friends throws a water balloon at him, gets the phone all wet, and he doesn't remember his girlfriend's phone number, which is an incredibly stupid plot point, because one of the plot points in the movie is that he hires a personal assistant who's very on the ball, and so she could be able to fix this in 10 minutes and the movie would be done. But nope, we got to suffer through 90 minutes of him and his friends going through Los Angeles looking for Megan Fox, and along the way breaking into her home, knocking over and breaking urns of the ashes of her dead relatives. And they believe that a viable replacement for those ashes is to smoke up as much weed as possible and take the ashes from what they've smoked and replace them in the urns. That's comedy in 2023, according to Colson Baker and Mod Sun, who co-wrote this mess. The other interesting factor is that Colson Baker's character is up for the lead in Batman, in the newest Batman, and this leads me to one of the huge problems with this movie is that the entire atmosphere of this movie does not feel right at all. Here, he's playing an actor, which in the movie is he's in a television series that is the most popular series on television at that time. They just finished a series finale, and he's up for the lead in Batman, which is the most coveted role in Hollywood for any male actor. Okay, you would feel that you would think that the atmosphere for this movie is one of electric excitement because it runs on gossip and rumors. You know, that's their bread and butter. So in this movie, there are no reporters, there's no paparazzi, there are no screaming fans except for one fan who tracks him down because she's a stalker. Boy, that's hilarious in 2023, and with this entire film, and I'm going to give you spoilers right here, folks, because I don't want you to watch this movie. I don't give a shit. So one thing about this entire film that is two things about this entire film that is just scummy is that during the end credits they do the gag reel. So they flub up a line and they laugh, ha ha ha. They're having a great time. I didn't. I spent 90 minutes not having a good time. Then after the credits, they include another scene where it's clear that the entire 90 minutes before was a script being read by London Clash for his next film project. But in order for that plot point to work, you had to have believed everything that happened the previous 90 minutes, or the entire thing falls flat. And guess what? The entire thing falls flat. So not only does it show that they don't have any sense of comedy, but that maybe Colson Baker and Maj Sun should not quit their day jobs and just work on rap.
Yeah, I mean that does sound really horrible.
You're welcome.
But you did say the movie was 90 minutes.
I think it was.
I think my gift was infinitely more generous because the film that I'm gonna be that I'm presenting for this category, in which I watched so you didn't have to, is close to 3 hours long. And that film in particular is Blonde, which was directed by Andrew Dominik, who is best known for directing The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford, Killing Them Softly, and Chopper. Now, I like all three of those movies. And this is an interesting one because Blonde does have an Oscar nomination to its credit, and that is in its lead performance by Ana de Armas as Norma G. Mortensen and Marilyn Monroe. The nomination is deserved for Best Actress at the Oscars. I was actually impressed to see photos of Ana de Armas. Her physical therapy seems to be going really well. She does have to single-handedly carry the entire 3-hour film on her shoulders. And I understand she had to go into intensive therapy over that. As for the film itself, this is a biopic, in quotations, about the life and times of Norma Jean Mortensen, also known as Marilyn Monroe. And it is essentially 3 hours of misery pornography. If you like to watch a woman go through intense trauma, such as sexual assault and rape and domestic violence, and especially if this is involving a person who actually existed, like Norma Jean Mortensen, Marilyn Monroe, then this might be the movie for you. At least this is what Andrew Dominik proposes. And this is adapted from a book written by Joyce Carol Oates, and the book itself, written by Oates, has since been debunked as being completely fraudulent. It is wildly inaccurate in terms of the life and times of Norma Jean Mortensen and Marilyn Monroe. But the way that the film presents itself is that there's never a time in the life of Norma Jean Mortensen where she was ever happy. Every instance is just people constantly manipulating her, people constantly getting inside of her head, and people taking advantage of her. And she's never allowed a moment of levity at any point during the entire film. And it's incredibly reductive when you're concerning somebody like Marilyn Monroe, who has gone down to become such an iconic figure in pop culture history and also just, international history as an entertainer. In terms of her activism, her feminism, that's all completely ignored. The point that the film wants to make is, oh my God, this poor woman was beaten and raped and taken advantage of. It really makes you think that we live in a society. And then the counter to that is that the movie also will recreate the shot from the 7-Year Itch where she's standing over the subway grates, and then it blows up her dress. And the movie decides, you know what we're going to do? We're going to get the camera behind her to get a better view of her butt, because that's all she is. Because the movie goes out of its way to call her a whore, and there's an incredibly gratuitous sequence where she has an encounter with the president of the United States at the time, which was John F. Kennedy. And it is one of the most despicable rape scenes that I have seen in recent memory. It's not at the level of Irreversible, but unlike Irreversible, this movie has no idea what it's doing. And by the end of it, it ends with her death scene. It ends with what was essentially a recreation of the actual death of Norma Jean Mortensen, Marilyn Monroe, in the hotel room back in 1962, I want to say. It ends up all the way recreating that. It is a thoroughly miserable, tasteless, I would even go as far as to say offensive, depiction of a biopic, depiction of any particular living person that I have seen in a long time. Here's the thing: when it comes to a Hollywood film, if you want to do a film that is I would say somewhat critical of a particular popular figure that was in Hollywood and also has been so imbued in pop culture, Marilyn Monroe is not really the person to do that with. If you wanted to do that on someone like a Harvey Weinstein or a Kevin Spacey or a Bill Cosby, sure, because those three, especially two of them, are now convicted criminals in the eyes of the law. One has been constantly escaping it for one reason or another, which we'll get into.
And all of them are still alive, too.
And all three of them are still alive. Yeah, and they're all male. But with this woman who died at the age of 36, I'm not sure what the whole point was, other than Andrew Dominic perhaps wanting to punch down on somebody who's already dead, on somebody who was no doubt, somebody who was probably exploited by the system that they had worked in, and all he does is continue to exploit her. So it is a thoroughly detestable film. And Lew, you're welcome for having not seen it.
Okay, let's go on to our nominees and choices, starting with worst screenplay. So Tyler, tell me what you would choose, who you would choose for the worst screenplay. The worst screenplays are from Blonde, Disney's Pinocchio, Good Morning, Jurassic World, and Morbius.
All right. This is interesting because there's two on here that I think are actually all five of these are contenders. All four of these are contenders, if you ask me. 5. Yeah, 5. All 5 of these are contenders. If I had to pick one, I could go with let's see. I see the nominees are Robert Zemeckis and Chris Weitz. It looks like they're missing the nominees cut and paste for Disney's Pinocchio, because it's literally a remake of Pinocchio. But we'll get into that in a bit. For my worst screenplay, I think I'm going to have to give it to Blonde, because of the way that they had written Marilyn Monroe and Norma G. Mortensen. Again, just writing her to be somebody who has no agency. She's just there basically to be a victim. And at the same time, also to be a figure of scrutiny, because essentially the words of Joyce Carol Oates and Andrew Dominic, in their eyes, Marilyn Monroe was a whore who got what she deserved. And that thoroughly hateful, detestable stance on Marilyn Monroe makes me select Blonde as the worst screenplay.
And because I've been instructed by you not to watch Blonde, I had to choose from Disney's Pinocchio, Good Morning, Jurassic World, and Morbius. And I think given what could have been done, my choice for this one was Jurassic World Dominion. And in large part because it tried to mix in different elements of a science fiction action drama and failed at practically all of them. So they had to try and mix in certain scientific reasonings. For instance, when the young girl is instructed that she has special DNA, and they have to come up with an alteration of her DNA in order to save the world and do so in a record time. That was absolutely hilarious, and because the thing is that these movies shouldn't exist in a vacuum. We're in a pandemic. We're supposedly in the tail end of a pandemic, but a pandemic is never mentioned as one of the diseases that dinosaurs roaming the earth could bring, and the fact that the mRNA technology that produced the vaccines was in development for 40 years. So that's one of the reasons why I had to laugh out loud when he said, "Well, we're gonna come up with an alteration of DNA." It's like, dude, it ain't gonna happen in a day. No. Sorry, I mean, not with the best scientists around. And also different elements that don't need to be in there. I mean, there doesn't need to be a kidnapping. There doesn't need to be a whole racist leaning a scene of dinosaur fighting, dino fighting done.
Oh yeah, like a cockfighting, yes.
Yeah, in a Middle Eastern country, whereas that's supposed to bring an element of disgust to you, but what happens at the very end of the climax? Big dinosaurs fight, yeah. And they fight in the rain, in the dark, at night. So it gives an excuse to cheapen any CGI that they wanted to do, because hey, no one's going to see it anyway. So that I give that to the screenwriters. I mean, that's you have to come up with this sort of thing, and also better lines for any of the actors to speak. I mean, if you're gonna bring original cast members, have them say interesting things. Don't waste their time. Don't waste their time.
When the best line you can offer the original actors from Jurassic Park is for Jeff Goldblum to say Jurassic World, not a fan. The best line is basically having the original actor diss the new trilogy. You got problems.
Yeah.
So, that's a good choice, Lou. That's a very good choice for worst screenplay. That because it really was atrocious. So next up is going to be worst screen couple.
Oh no! Actually, I have
worst director.
Sorry, I have worst director up.
Worst director, and then Lou's going to lead us off. So the worst director nominees are Judd Apatow for The Bubble, Colson Baker, aka Machine Gun Kelly, and Maud's son for Good Morning, Andrew Dominic for Blonde, Daniel Espinosa for Morbius, and Robert Zemeckis for Disney's Pinocchio. Lou, who is your choice for this year's worst director out of the 5 I just listed off?
I gave strong consideration to Judd Apatow for The Bubble, because if you watch The Bubble, there's some good stuff among good stuff being done in The Bubble, but the pacing of it is way off. It feels as though the pacing is always of a nature that's almost slapstick comedy, and it needed to slow down a lot because there are a lot of characters bring forth a lot of lines, and one of the other problems with that particular movie is that each scene seemed to have like a punchline that had to be delivered by an actor. So it didn't seem like there were any supporting characters who were just there to give a foundation to the story. It was everybody, you had everybody's a big name star, so or a decent name star, so they have to have a scene, they have to have a line in order to complete, and it makes the whole thing a mess. Until the last, I would say, 20 minutes. But I got to give it to Robert Zemeckis because he's the Oscar winner here. He's the one who's changed animation with Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and who's given us an iconic figure with Forrest Gump in directing that movie with Tom Hanks, who appears in this movie,
That's right.
Disney's
That's right.
Pinocchio, of course. It's the choices that he makes here are, I don't know if he's following Disney's lead and all, but if you look at the choices made by Zemeckis here and by Guillermo del Toro in his choices in Pinocchio, there's such stark differences. There's a sense of Guillermo del Toro taking the story seriously, taking the animation seriously as cinema, as he even states it, and I felt it all the way through, where he gives a freshness and originality to it. He gives a sense of time and place. It doesn't even have to be in the 1880s, which is when the original Pinocchio was written. It could take place in 1930s fascist Italy, and totally makes sense. Totally makes sense in those confines. But instead, Robert Zemeckis doesn't give us any sense of day and time, and especially as you noted with the clocks on the wall
Oh
referring
my
to
God.
different Disney animations.
Yeah.
You know, this was this was just a cash cow for Disney, and Zemeckis had to have a hand in it. He had to say yes, and he had to make those choices, and so that's why I chose him.
And well, and even if they weren't his choices, there's such an indifference to Pinocchio with its direction that I think his nomination for me is actually going to be one of two. I'm going to be very generous this year with my Razzies. There isn't just going to be one winner for some of these. There's going to be two winners. I agree that Zemeckis should be nominated, especially because Zemeckis, he's the guy who directed Back to the Future. He directed Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He directed Castaway. And he starting all the way back from I Want to Hold Your Hand, Used Cars. Like the guy knows how to make a movie. And so looking at Pinocchio, I don't even really get the sense that that's actually even Zemeckis directing. Other than the presence of Tom Hanks and the presence of Joseph Gordon-Levitt as the voice of Jiminy Cricket, I don't get the sense that's one of his movies. There's usually some sort of a autorial stamp that he'll put onto some of his stuff, and you don't really get that with this. It just sort of felt like, yeah, this will be a quick paycheck. Why not? We could shoot all of Tom Hanks' scenes over a weekend, essentially. And then at the same time, I can also make some cute references that completely take the audience out of the movie by making references to one of my movies, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, with the cuckoo clock, and then throw it up with Maleficent. The Lion King is another reference that's thrown in there. None of it makes any sense. My other choice for worst director is Andrew Dominic, again, for exploiting a dead person. And the reason why he chose to, and the thing with Blonde is that I don't know why he would make a movie about Marilyn Monroe if he clearly hated her. Because it's not gonna. Because nobody did anybody have the foresight to tell him, okay, if you're gonna make some sort of hit piece about Marilyn Monroe, that's not gonna go very well. If you want to make a hit piece about Harvey Weinstein, like, go for it. There actually was one that came out last year. It was called "She Said" with Carey Mulligan. It's all about the expose that revealed who the kind of person that Harvey Weinstein ultimately turned out to be. I mean, yeah, if you want to make a hit piece about somebody who actually did do serious criminal activities that involve the direct harm of another individual, by all means, go for it. When it comes to someone like a Marilyn Monroe, why would you want to make a hit piece on her unless you wanted to basically commit career suicide? And in the case of Andrew Dominik, I think he succeeded. I mean, if he wanted to end his directorial career completely and never recover, I think he did a great job. So in that sense, the worst director for me has to go to both Zemeckis and Dominik.
It's sounding right now. It's sounding from you like Blonde might have been one of the very worst movies you've ever seen in your life.
I really hated it. I mean, here's the one thing that the saving grace of it, I'll say, is this. The music by Nick Cave and Warren Ellis is really, really good. And Ana de Armas, as Marilyn Monroe, as Norma Jean Mortensen, her performance is so good, it's shocking. There are parts of it where I stopped seeing the actress, and she literally does bring this iconic character to life. It's so good. I want to see her play the role again in a film that actually treats that role with respect. Now, I know there are some people who are mad that Ana de Armas is nominated for Best Actress. And here's where I disagree. Okay, Ana de Armas, the thing is that opportunities for actresses are not the same as opportunities are for actors. That's just the case. Just plain and simple. Just ask Michelle Yeoh. Okay? I mean, Hollywood is inherently sexist, and those opportunities for women are just not as present as they are for men. That's just the truth. It's the harsh truth. So I can see why she would say yes to taking on this role, because she's being asked to play Marilyn Monroe. Like,
Sure.
come on.
Sure.
And
I
also,
mean, what actress? I mean, if they're given
Right.
the opportunity, if you're competing with, you're auditioning with scores of other women, in order to play Marilyn Monroe, and they say, "Hey, we'd like you." It's like, do you think any smart actor is going to say no? I'm not going to play her.
Exactly, right. Exactly. That's the whole thing. So, like, if I was in her shoes, I wouldn't turn that down either. And that's the other thing too, is that she didn't write this movie and she didn't direct it either. She had nothing to do with the creation of it. All she had to do was portray this character, and her portrayal is so good, it's startling. Like, it's positively eerie how much she brings Marilyn Monroe back to life. And that's what made the movie all the more frustrating of a watch. So when you say, like, this might be one of the worst films I've ever seen, here's where I'm coming from. I don't know if I would call it the worst film I've ever seen. Because I've seen movies like Unplanned. I've seen movies like The Passion of the Christ. But when you have a bullseye like Ana de Armas as Marilyn Monroe, and all you had to say about the character is that she was a starlet in Hollywood who got taken advantage of, and she kind of deserved it because she is a woman working in Hollywood, made it all the more frustrating to watch. And frankly, Andrew Dominik should have known better, especially because he also he's done movies about very flawed people before, but you think that he would probably have, like, some sort of, sensitivity towards the subject, but instead he's just like, no, I'm going to treat Marilyn Monroe like I'm going to treat the guy who killed criminal Jesse James. I'm going to give her the exact same treatment. Why? Because I want to be provocative. I want to be edgy. I want to stick it to the libs, kind of thing. So,
well, speaking of well, it's more bad things. We're now. Actually, I forgot exactly what the topic was, but anyway,
Screen couple.
it's the
Worst
worst
screen
screen
couple.
couple. And let's see, it looks like the nominees are Colson Baker and Maud Sun for Good Morning, both real life characters in a fallacious White House bedroom scene in Blonde, Tom Hanks in his latex laden face and ludicrous accent in Elvis, Andrew Dominic and his issues with women with Blonde, and the two 365-day sequels. Yeah.
Yeah,
And what
both
do you
released in
choose?
2022. So my choice. I Let's start with the category here. I like how creative these choices are.
Yeah.
Now, usually when you think of screen couple, you think of two actors in a scene together that should not be acting off each other. So, pardon me. But in this instance, we have the choice Andrew Dominic and his issues with women, which I have to pick as one of my two choices. That has to go there. Tom Hanks and his latex laden face. Okay, well, we'll get to Tom Hanks in a bit. The thing about Tom Hanks when it comes to Elvis, which Lou, I don't think you've seen. I did see that
No.
one. Tom Hanks, I wouldn't necessarily say that he's bad in the movie. Here's the thing: Tom Hanks is not a bad actor. Tom Hanks is a great actor. There are instances where a director will cast Tom Hanks in the role that he's not necessarily the right person for that part. That happens a lot, and I think this is going to be something we'll touch up on as we get to those nominees. So I'm not going to pick Tom Hanks. I didn't see the 365-day sequels, and I did not see Good Morning. So the end result is that my worst screen couple is going to go to Andrew Dominic and his issues with women, and both real-life characters in the fallacious White House bedroom scene in Blonde. Now, to talk about the White House bedroom scene in Blonde, content warning, listeners. This subject is entirely dedicated to a rape scene. So, Marilyn Monroe is tasked to come to the White House to visit JFK. And JFK is on the phone dealing with presidential matters. And he barely looks at Marilyn Monroe, let alone considers her even a human being. So while she's there to comfort him because he's sick, he grabs her hand and has her grab his genitals to get him off. And then at a certain point, he forces her head down there, and then you have this really tasteless shot of Ana de Armas simulating giving a blowjob. And the entire time she's under distress, and also on top of that, there's this narration that you hear from her point of view. And the weird thing is that the scene follows it with her miscarriage. And that's when the film gets into some rather right-leaning takes on abortion and miscarriage and stuff like that, which are inherently dangerous. But yeah, the entire scene is completely gratuitous in the sense that we've already seen at that point Marilyn Monroe objectified, taken advantage of, abused, and even sexually assaulted, to where this just comes off as completely redundant. But in this scene, you have to do the character assassination of not one but two people. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that JFK was, an absolute golden boy. He definitely had his flaws and everything, but they treat JFK like he's Donald Trump. And yet this is coming from the viewpoint of somebody who probably supported Donald Trump with his policies and particular views on women. So, I don't want to be presumptuous, but the points of view that Andrew Dominic has on women, in particular Marilyn Monroe, in this really call things into question. It's just sort of like, how do you really feel about, this sort of thing, that sort of thing? How do you really feel about, when women come forward about rape? Do you find it to be a witch hunt? Because those who've often come forward and said that, the Me Too movement was a witch hunt, have resulted in, participating in that themselves and also get canceled. So, those are my choices. Both for Blonde. Lew, what are yours?
Well, because three of the nominees, the two nominees for Blonde and the one for Elvis, I have not seen. My choices are between Colson Baker and Mod Sun, and the two 365-day sequels. I want to say something really quick about Tom Hanks, because you brought him up. Tom Hanks has been in his share, especially earlier in his career, in pretty bad movies, but he's progressed into being what I think is a legendary film actor, along
Yes.
and creating iconic characters. And so in that way, he's given himself a level that's up to, say, a John Wayne or a Jimmy Stewart. And so that's why I think when you have regionally specific characters, with the Southerner in Colonel Parker, for Elvis, and Geppetto for Disney's Pinocchio, it's a tougher sell, because I don't think he hasn't really had to method act as much, I guess you might say, because his persona is enough in order to give an essence of what it means to be American, in a sense,
Yeah.
in the movies. And so that sense of his persona transcends his characters. And so asking him to do these other bits doesn't really fit, you know.
Right.
And so I think that becomes the problem with using Tom Hanks in it. But for reasons that I've given before, I have to give it to Colson Baker and Mod Sun, basically because they play the most boring stoners I've ever seen in the movies. I can't remember. I mean, other than breaking the urns and everything, I can't. There's not a single funny moment in Good Morning, and none that require them to be the types of characters that could have been referred to in the past when you were dealing with stoner characters. So what I mean is that Colson Baker's character is already well-to-do. He lives in Los Angeles, and he lives in a really nice house, a really nice mansion, where with his friends, and he actually gets THC showers in the morning. Ha ha ha. That's how well off he is. And usually in stoner comedies, you're dealing with people who have lousy jobs and they don't know what they're going to do, and what's the future for them and everything. And these guys treat these stoners like they're those stoners, and it completely makes no sense. It absolutely makes no sense. It's you're talking about basically the stoners in Good Morning, who are already very privileged, and so who cares? I didn't care about them, and so they made a really bad couple. Now this goes on to our worst supporting actor. The next is a worst supporting actor. We've got some repeats on here. Pete Davidson for Good Morning, Tom Hanks and Elvis, Xavier Samuel in Blonde, Mod Sun in Good Morning, and Evan Williams in Blonde. And for my choice here, I want to give it to Pete Davidson. Although it states here he's a cameo role, it's a little more than a cameo role. It's not. He isn't in just one scene and then he's off. He is in several scenes in the movie, and the reason why I give it to him is because he's the veteran of comedy here. He's the one who's supposed to know, because he was in SNL. He's supposed to know what's funny, what's not, and he just doesn't. He looks kind of lost here. He looks a little embarrassed in a few scenes, and I want to bring this up about Razzie nominations for Pete Davidson in both this and the lead in the lead for Marmaduke. And in the past, the Razzies have been criticized for choosing people simply because they're in the news. You know, Pete Davidson was dating Kim Kardashian last year, and so he's a newsmaker, and so they gravitate towards him because they want to kind of pick on him. But I want to assure people out there that his performance in Good Morning and his performance in Marmaduke were not good performances. They're not just picking on the guy. Pete Davidson doesn't show his talents in both of these roles, so that's why I'll choose him for worst supporting actor.
I'm actually gonna do something kind of weird here for worst supporting actor. Excuse me. I can't really pick any of them. Not even the two from the movie Blonde that are nominated. Although they're not good, Evan Williams and Xavier Samuel. Xavier Samuel especially is not very good because he does this thing. It's one of my favorite cliches. It's one of my favorite tropes that young hot male actors will do. Is that they'll have a higher registered voice and yet they'll speak in their vocal fry because it sounds so sexy, and that's the entire manner in which he speaks in this entire movie, or at least in his duration of his appearance in the whole film. He was directed that way because Xavier Samuel and Evan Williams, they're both essentially hot-looking dudes who are there to be what are known as the Gemini whenever they enter into a relationship with Marilyn Monroe. It happens. It further exploits Marilyn Monroe. That's not really the fault of the actors. Again, they're not good, but I'm hesitant on giving the award to anybody. So for worst supporting actor, my vote is a vote of no confidence.
Okay. Well, do you have a vote of confidence for worst supporting actress?
Sadly, I do.
The worst supporting actresses are Adria Arjona for Morbius, Lorraine Bracco for Disney's Pinocchio, she's a voice only, Penelope Cruz for 355, Bing Bing Fan for 355 and King's Daughter, Mira Sorvino for Lamborghini, the man behind the legend.
All right, well, my vote of confidence for worst supporting actress is going to be Lorraine Bracco for Disney's Pinocchio. She was dead wrong for that role. Absolutely dead wrong for that role. She's also has given great performances in films like Goodfellas and TV shows like The Sopranos. And with Disney's Pinocchio, she sounds like she just woke up.
Yeah. She. I gotta say, I'm not sure. Is this the first one that we agreed on? Because that's my choice.
This is the first one we agreed on. It won't be the last one either, but this is the first one we agreed upon.
I have a feeling it won't be the last one we agree on. But yeah, I also chose Lorraine Bracco with her whiskey-sounding voice for Disney's Pinocchio.
Yes. Go on. I'm going to plug in my computer real quick, but please go on.
Oh, okay. Yep. Mm-hmm. And the reason, one of the reasons for this being that, once again, like you mentioned, like Tyler mentioned, she is wrong for the role. Unfortunately, this is not a slam on her as an actress. This isn't a slam on her for her talents as an actress. It's just she was the wrong choice for this role, and it's really unfortunate because the seagull in Pinocchio is one of the new characters that was given to Pinocchio that wasn't in the original 1940s Pinocchio, that was completely that was completely unnecessary. There are other
Had to pad
characters.
it out.
There are other characters. There's one other character that I could see. When we talked about this, one other character in the new Pinocchio that I could see the addition in. Okay, and I can understand it, but the seagull, there wasn't there was no need for it, and Lorraine Bracco was just. She just wasn't the right person to do it, you know. Sorry,
No.
she's great in other stuff, and she'll be great in other stuff too. But
Yeah, she
just
will
not in
be.
this
She
one.
will be. Yep. No. Here's the thing. I'm actually looking forward to Lorraine Bracco's next performance because she'll probably be great in that.
Okay, so for worst actor,
Oh boy.
you want to talk about something where you wonder if the actor is going to be better in anything else. This was actually a tough competition between four actors. Okay, for
Yeah.
me, Colson Baker, Pete Davidson, it's Sylvester Stallone and Jared Leto. And I want to mention something very quickly about Stallone. I mentioned this about in my review for Samaritan. in So Stallone is getting very, very close to endangering his career as being someone who's made decades worth of trash with only a few sprinkles of good stuff in between, instead of having an even flow of good and bad stuff. You know, I mean, Nicolas Cage has made his fair share of a lot of trash, a lot of garbage, but in fair amounts of time, he's come out with good stuff. So
Oh yeah.
it's not always bad all the time. He's not making the bad decisions. It's almost as though Stallone is just making these horrible decisions one after another with very few exceptions.
You want to hear a really questionable decision he made? There's going to be a reality show about him and his family.
Oh boy, maybe that's one of the questions they can ask him. Why were you in so many bad movies? Hey, I'd like to see that clip on YouTube. I'd like to see his answer. You know,
Yeah.
maybe.
I mean,
Maybe
he
he
has.
doesn't.
He has badmouthed his own movies before. He's even done SNL sketches about some of the bad movies that he's done. So
But he keeps making them. Why make
does. He does.
Why make Samaritan anyway? Okay, but he's not even my choice. He's not even my choice for worst actor. My
you
choice
could
for
have
worst
fooled
actor.
me.
He's not even my choice for worst
I know
actor.
your choices, though.
But
I know who your choice is gonna be.
I know it's Jared Leto for Morbius,
Yeah.
because Jared Leto, I cannot believe. Here's the difference between Jared Leto and some of the others. Jared Leto is the executive producer, one of the executive producers for Morbius. If you put your name up there on as executive producer, you want it to be there. It isn't just given to you, and Marvel's not just going to give it to you, you know, unless you fight for it. You know, unless you fight for it, or your agent fights for it. You know, and you allow them to.
Yeah.
So that he had to have that had to have been given to him, you know, under his maybe demand. Maybe it's a soft demand, hard demand. I don't know, but you gotta deliver, and
Yes.
he goes through virtually every scene in this movie, looking like he doesn't want to be there, looking depressed. You know, if you want to have a depressed character, then do a movie where he has depression. You know, there are movies out this year about people on depression. You know, do a movie about about depression. Don't do a movie about a superhero who wins the Nobel Prize in medicine. Okay, and rejects the prize, and you know, just has to go around moping around, and he's not even convincing as someone who's had a serious disease. He gives the least amount of energy that he could ever give in the movie, and I'm convinced, and we were talking about this earlier about actors who get affected by that. I'm convinced that that's why Kaya Scodelario, oh excuse me, Adria Arjona gave a bad performance in Morbius. I'm convinced that could be a major reason why, because he's not in the movie. He's
Right.
you know, what do you act against? And unless you're
His mind was focused on his cult.
yeah, yeah, it might have been. She would have to be on the level of a Meryl Streep in order to be able to give a great performance opposite him. But he's the executive producer. He's the executive producer, and he's the big name. He's the biggest name in the movie. He's bigger than Matt Smith, who outacts him. Okay, and
Right.
and makes a much better villain than he does a hero. So, or a superhero.
Yeah.
in that
Right.
sense. So Matt Smith's character is much more interesting. I would have wanted to see a movie about him rather than
Absolutely.
rather than Jared Leto. So it was a very, very big bring down. And Jared Leto just coming a couple of years off an Oscar win. Come on.
Well, it was actually about 10 years ago now.
Okay, time flies.
Time takes us all. Time takes us all. My pick is also Jared Leto. Here's the thing, like the stories I hear about Jared Leto when it comes to him being like a leading actor or being like a big presence in whatever film that he does, they do kind of bother me. And Morbius is no exception. Apparently, the crew had to take 45 minutes out of their day for several shooting days to help Jared Leto go use the bathroom. And for me, whenever I hear stories like that, and Jared Leto is on the screen as Morbius, going through his Morbin time, and he's looking like he doesn't want to be there. It's just like, and then I hear the stories about how he gets into the character where he will, because he's supposed to be physically disabled in the film. And if I hear stories about how he's making the crew help him go to the bathroom because he's choosing not to move after the director calls cut, it just tells me, it makes me question the acting capabilities of this particular person. I'll just go ahead and say it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that Jared Leto is somebody who can act. I'm going to go ahead and say it now. If I'm hearing stories like this, and I've heard stories about him on Suicide Squad, where he's mailing rats to co-stars in order to get into the character of the Joker. Here's the thing, Lou. I've played scumbags before in movies. In order to get into the character, that didn't require me to torment my co-stars or to add additional work to crew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You just show up, have your lines memorized, mean what you say, react to what the other actor's giving you, and then that's how you go. So I'm all for Jared Leto getting worst actor, because when it comes to being an example of what it means to be an actor in Hollywood, he's one of the worst examples out there.
Mm-hmm.
And also, he sucks in Morbius.
Now, I in giving my view of Jared Leto, I look at it in the sense of not knowing any other extraneous stuff about what went on the set and everything, but what the point that we've been making during the show is that what can happen in between takes and outside can affect the performance and can affect the performance of the central person and others and others around that person. And so this won't be the last time we're mentioning this too. But but that's the whole thing of, to bring up about Jared Leto is that it just, the performance is just not there, and he should be much more capable of doing that. I give him a little bit more leeway because I've actually have seen him in give good performances in good movies, but yeah, if he's wasting his time and his talent this way, that's a hard road to take, and one that an actor should not be taking.
Yeah, and also wasting the time of others.
Yes,
on top
exactly,
of that.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So now, Tyler, worst actress for you.
All right. Well, we'll go through the nominees. There's only 4. They are Bryce Dallas Howard for Jurassic Park Dominion, Diane Keaton for Mac and Rita, Kaya Scodelario for The King's Daughter, and Alicia Silverstone for The Rakin. Now, I did not see Mac and Rita. I just saw The King's Daughter, and I don't agree with the nomination for Kaya Scodelario. Nobody in that movie really looks good. That's what happens when you have a movie that's also co-financed by the Chinese government. You're going to run into some problems. Bryce Dallas Howard, who I think is a really good actress. I will admit she's not great in Jurassic Park Dominion, but the thing is that the script that she had didn't really do her any favors, and I find it weird that of all the actors, she was the only one singled out for a nomination when the lead actor, Chris Pratt, had arguably less intense scenes that he had to do. Because here's the thing, the action scenes that he was in, it was all done in front of a green screen. He was totally fine. Bryce Dallas Howard actually had to go into a swamp and get dirty and stuff like that, and they still gave her a Worst Actress nomination. Whereas Chris Pratt just does this anytime a dinosaur comes up with this expression. And somehow he didn't get a nomination for it, when Chris Pratt is better than that. He has been better, like in Parks and Rec, in Guardians of the Galaxy, hell, even the Lego movie with his voice work in that.
Mm-hmm.
Mario! Oh, and with Mario coming up.
Okay. I don't want to bring that up, but yeah, who do you?
Oh no, with Mario, we'll find out in a bit. But in terms of worst actress, you and I both found something really special with Alicia Silverstone in The Rakin. Because my God, that performance in that movie. I mean, here's the thing, with The Rakin, it's supposed to be a horror film, and Alicia Silverstone plays it almost like it's a I wouldn't say almost. She plays it like it's a comedy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you gave away my secret. That's okay, because I do want to say that out of all the acting performance nominations, lead and supporting, Alicia Silverstone outdoes them all by a mile. All of them, even Chris Pratt. All of them. Her performance in The Rakin is one for the ages, and I'll tell the folks the story. As soon as after I watched The Rakin, I begged Tyler to go and see it because I knew that there were some movies. I knew that there were some movies that he would not see, wouldn't get a chance to see. But I begged him to see The Rakin. And this is the only film out of any of these films that I would say that I would mention on this podcast. For the listeners out there, I would beg you to watch The Rakin, because it is one of the most unintentionally funniest films I have seen, certainly from last year. And Tyler alluded to the fact that Silverstone's performance is absolutely hilarious, and this is a thing that's a plus for her. I mean, we're in a hit weekend, the second weekend for Cocaine Bear, which is a hit comedy with horror. That's how Elizabeth Banks made it. She made it a comedy with horror. If there's a Cocaine Bear 2, get Alicia Silverstone. Because she's a great physical comic actress. If you watch her perform, if you watch her perform in The Rakeen, she overacts in every scene. She overacts in every scene, and it helps that it is a very physical performance, because you're dealing here with, in case folks didn't see The Rakeen or don't know what it's about, she plays a woman who goes through PTSD because she has a miscarriage while in the bathtub, and so she and her husband decide to go to a resort that's completely surrounded by water in Vietnam. Now,
Yes.
now I don't know what the character is thinking when he decides that he wants to put her in a little cottage surrounded by water, which could be a PTS trigger, and knowing that it's typhoon season. It's even mentioned in the movie. He knew it was typhoon season, but they did so anyway.
It's like a sequel to Lars von Trier's Antichrist more than
Yeah. Except the problem is with Antichrist, neither of these movies was done for laughs.
No.
It should have been. They wouldn't have been so aggravating. So the Rakeen is French for shark. So the problem is that in a typhoon, their little cottage gets wrecked, and so Alicia Silverstone and her husband, played by James Tupper, bless his soul.
Oh, James Tupper is oh my god, I love him in this.
have to survive, and there's the funniest sequence in the movie is where James Tupper and Alicia Silverstone are hanging on to a raft that used to be their house, their little
Yes.
hut. and James Tupper, as my roommate Jacob so succinctly and accurately put it, I think he said he clocks out.
Yeah, he does. He really does, though.
He pulls the arm on that time clock and says, "I'm done acting."
Yeah, what we're watching is James Tupper acting in overtime. So we were talking earlier about Chris Pratt. Okay, here's the thing: Chris Pratt is the lead in Jurassic World Dominion. He has an obligation to at least try. He has an obligation to take the bad film seriously. James Tupper, here's the thing with the Rakeen. Rakeen's like a $5 million independent, piece of junk that's produced by
international co-production.
International co-production. It's got like 90 seconds of production logos. That's the kind of film that it is. And the display of James Tupper completely no longer caring about what is happening is really something to behold. To the point where I have to give him kudos. I have to respect him for the amount of disinterest that he has towards the movie. I almost think that there should be a new category for actors who realized what they were in.
Mm-hmm.
Category, and then and I would give this honorary award to James Tupper, because in terms of no longer caring about the bad movie that you're in, James Tupper, that was masterful.
Yeah, and also a category for movies that deserve a cult screening, because I would rank this. I would rank this up there with The Room for the amount of entertainment value that you can actually get out of this movie. It really is. I think it's seriously up there, and I would say, I mean, if you're Alicia Silverstone or James Tupper or anybody who's been in these magnanimous failures, lean into it, man. Lean into it, and know that you made this ambitious failure, and acknowledge it, and I swear to you, you will get you will have a lot of fans who will admire that sort of thing, and I
Yeah.
think honestly you'll get some attention to doing that because Hollywood runs on popularity, and if you seem amiable enough to be able to take the joke, and be able to say, yeah, this was a bad movie, then 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 you should do that. You mentioned Stallone before. Stallone Stallone should be in an action film directed by Edgar Wright that makes total
Yeah.
fun of his characters. If he's he can't just go on SNL and joke about these things. He should actually parody himself in a good action comedy. And there are guys out there, men and women out there who can direct these. So he should look for that, and so should Alicia Silverstone too, because it's a DVD worth hunting down once it gets released. The Rakeen.
Yes. So next up, we're going to be moving on to worst ripoff, remake, or sequel. Lou is going to kick this off, but as a reminder, we're going to list them off here real quick. The worst remake, ripoff, sequel nominees are Blonde, both 365-day sequels, and the next 365 days, this day, and the next 365 days. Disney's Pinocchio, Firestarter, and Jurassic World Dominion. And Lou is going to kick us off with his pick for the worst remake, ripoff, or sequel.
Yeah, mine is mine is going to be a twofer. I want to mention just something really quick about 365, about 365 Days sequel. Both of those sequels are on Netflix right now, and they're the type of movies where you can actually watch it at the fastest speed, like 1.5, with subtitles, and you won't miss anything because
Yes.
because people take their time going to a disco to dance, going to a bedroom to screw, going to a swimming pool to fuck, and all these other things, and they take their dear sweet time for doing it. So you can you can cut this movie down by at least half by your viewing time by switching it to 1.5 speed and clicking on every 10 seconds forward. So if you ever need to see it, because they're all going to be the same. Okay, so as far as that's concerned, minus a twofer, the worst remake ripoff and sequel is the same as the worst picture, which is Disney's Pinocchio. There's actually no reason on earth to ever remake the 1940s Pinocchio. Disney was founded in I think had the foundation of being the studio that was the most serious about animation back in the early days, almost 100 years ago, with 3 feature-length animations, and that's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Fantasia, and 1940s Pinocchio. All 3 of those films had an incredible craftsmanship with it. There's a great atmosphere. There's great mood. There's great music in Pinocchio too.
Yeah.
I mean, When You Wish Upon a Star is their theme song.
It is.
Why mess with this, and why? I've gone over most of the stuff before, but if there was another director or another studio that repeated Pinocchio in the same way that Disney decided to do in Disney's Pinocchio, that studio, that filmmaker would be sued. And
Yes.
And we know Disney is litigious. They have been litigious, and there are examples of it in the news if you look it up. So it's a real shame and major disappointment. So yeah, both it is really the most cynical movie viewing experience I've had of the year.
I think it's going to be, before I even say what my Ripoff remake sequel is, I'm going to go ahead and say this now. It's going to be the same as yours, Lou, and it's also going to be the same as what we might as well move into, which is the Worst Picture nominees, and which are the following: Blonde, Good Morning, The King's Daughter, Morbius, and our mutual pick for Worst Picture and Worst Ripoff remake or sequel, and that is Disney's Pinocchio. And I agree completely with what you said about that.
Don't you feel that this movie outranks them all because it had the most to lose?
Yes. It completely besmirched the legacy of the original animated Pinocchio. It doesn't do anything new with this one. In fact, if anything, the most of the changes that are made in it are for the worse. In particular, the ending. Now, we'll go ahead and spoil. I'm going to go ahead and spoil the ending of Disney's Pinocchio for you, because don't watch it. All right, so in the 1940s Pinocchio, the ultimate payoff of the story is that Pinocchio has this wish that he wants to become a real boy, and the ultimate payoff is that that wish is fulfilled. In Disney's Pinocchio, he doesn't get to fulfill that wish. And not only that, they removed the part where it looks like for about 30 seconds that Pinocchio is dead, because we can't have any tension in this movie whatsoever. So the ending of the actual Pinocchio is that it's Geppetto who's thought to be dead, but that, of course, doesn't stick. He's alive. He wakes up. They're on the beach, far away from home. And Geppetto basically accepts wooden Pinocchio that looks like something that you could pick up over at Disney World as a real boy. And then they walk off into the sunset, and apparently they allegedly live happily ever after. So the big payoff of him transforming into a real boy, which is magical when it happens, is completely cut out of the film. So not only did they go through the cynical exercise of remaking this institutional classic that's been around for close to 90 years now, and they completely gut the whole point of the movie. I would be thrown in prison for doing something like that. My career would be over.
Yeah, in the ending of Zemeckis's Disney's Pinocchio, like you say, there's the promise that's made near the beginning of this version of Pinocchio that is the same as the 1940s version of Pinocchio. And, and yes, I'm going to compare it to Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, and I'm not going to give away the
totally fair.
And I'm not going to give away the ending, but but the ending for Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio is much more thought out and is much more profound than this version, which, it wanted to rip off the 1940s Pinocchio. So why not go all the way? Why not make him a real boy? Does he have to stop a nuclear war in order to be a real boy? I mean, he saves his father's life. I mean, it's such a cheapened ending.
It is.
Given what they've promised and what they're ripping off in the first place.
Yeah.
It's truly amazing. So anyway.
Yeah, no, Pinocchio, Disney's Pinocchio, that was a dumpster fire. Oh my God, I'm just glad I don't have to watch it again.
Thank goodness, you and I both. All right, let's. I want to do an open discussion really quickly on two things. Razzie's biggest snub, and I want to start with that first because I think you gave a little bit of an indication of what of the person or the film or the entity, I guess you might say, of what should have been nominated but was not nominated. And can I guess correctly that what you're going to say? Or what What do you think
Yes, you
it's
can.
going to be?
Yes, you can. You could probably assume that one of them is Chris Pratt, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I
Well,
would say I'm in total agreement with you.
yeah, yeah. Not nominations that did not get scored, but that should have. I would say for either picture or remake, ripoff, or both. The snubbing of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. That should have been nominated. That was a completely garbage sequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's supposed to be a direct sequel to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And here is how they pay off the legacy of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The original survivor that was played by the late Marilyn Burns. She comes back and she's basically cut and paste of Jamie Lee Curtis in the latest Halloween sequels. And the big payoff for that character is that she has a chainsaw shoved through her chest and she's tossed onto a pile of garbage.
Nice.
Classy, very
Yeah.
classy.
Yeah, I assume this was a musical. You know.
It actually would have been an improvement if it was a musical. Although I think a member of our audience, Anonymous Bear, might disagree with that. May or may not be Matt Weinstein lingering in there. Another pick for worst picture of 2022 would be Redeeming Love, which is a Christian romantic drama. And here's what I can say about it. I've seen the movie. I know I've seen the movie. I was with people when we saw it, and I can't tell you anything about it.
Yeah, went through you like raisins. If I can
Yes.
tell you, I mean, I wish I could remember the movies that did, but they just disappear in the ether, and
Right.
I many times I can't remember the title, you know, because even
Exactly.
the title is not any good.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you with Chris Pratt. I would say also that the my choice for the snub is actually a movie that got a nomination. It's for Diane Keaton, Mac and Rita. I would give Mac and Rita more nominations, and in fact, it was if it were up to me, I mean it would probably be up there for worst picture, and in for several reasons. If people are not familiar with Mac and Rita is basically sort of like a switcheroo type of comedy where 30-year-old Mac is a writer. She goes to she goes to this sort of new age guru who has a tanning bed, and while in the tanning bed, she gets transformed into 70-year-old Diane Keaton. Now,
that premise right there alone is real bad.
Yeah, and but actually it gets worse because Mac, the original Mac, the 30-year-old Mac, kind of feels like she's an older, more mature woman inside her. Anyway, so in a way, she gets to live out what it would be like when she's 40 years older. But the problem is that the big problem with the movie is that it doesn't really make any sense. So if the movie wanted to make any sense, it would not only make her older 40 years, but everybody else in the movie older by 40 years. But what happens is only she, the Diane Keaton character, who's the older Mac, now touted as Rita because she's got to come up with a new name and not say that she's Mac. So she pretends that she Diane Keaton is her Aunt Rita. Okay, so everybody else is kept in contemporary time, but she ages 40 years, and it's a sort of thing that wouldn't even work if it was a 60s, fantasy sitcom, of which there were many, because there were so many loose ends to it and loopholes, I mean, to it that wouldn't make any sense. But the one thing that was really offensive to me is the fact that this film is supposed to be made with the sense of women empowerment, and basically all it does is it makes women in this movie seem as indifferent, sometimes cruel, sometimes perverse, as how they figure men would be. But only men in movies are allowed to be this way. Which means bad movies. So I'll give you an example. First off, there's a couple examples. Number one, when Mac disappears and Rita shows up, Rita is in Mac's apartment, saying, "Oh, I'm her aunt, and I'm apartment sitting for her." Now Mac has a very important date coming up. She's supposed to be a bridesmaid for her best friend. So do any of her friends? And the excuse given is that Mac is not in Los Angeles anymore right now. She's in Scottsdale, Arizona, deciding that she wants to write a book. Does anybody check on her? Does anybody go to Scottsdale, Arizona? Because I mean, could she be depressed? Is there something massively wrong? Scottsdale, Arizona is not necessarily that far, to maybe check on her. Do they care? No, nobody checks on her. They assume this when Rita appears from completely out of the ether. No one's seen her before. She has no track record of where she's ever been, so no one's ever suspicious of her. Another big loophole, and actually a really nasty scene, in my opinion, is that Diane Keaton as Rita goes with a newfound friend to her neighbor, and her neighbor is I forget the actor's name, but he plays David's lover in Schitt's Creek. Okay, really handsome, very handsome guy, and they go, he's handsome, he rides a skateboard and all. And so they climb on a box and they peek through his windows, spying on him, just to kind of, do the Google eyes on him and say, he's kind of hot and all. And the first thing I thought was that, what if the genders were reversed? What if it was a 70-year-old woman a 70-year-old man standing on a box, looking at a much younger guy, or a younger woman through.
Oh no! It would be horrifying. But that's the thing. It would be absolutely creepy. It'd be horrifying, and what you're pointing out is an inherent problem with with Hollywood, is that they're still so ass backwards about not just representation, but it's also in terms of just depictions of what is okay and what is not okay. Is that they have a great double standard. Is whenever an older woman preys upon a younger man, they think it's hilarious. Mm-hmm. If an older man preys upon a younger woman, that is horrifying. Aren't both of them supposed to be horrifying?
Yeah. They both should be. So that's my choice is the ones that deserve it. Mac and Rita. Don't watch it, folks. It's a big waste of time. It's a waste of Diane Keaton's time, especially. So the most undeserved nomination, I'm going to say right now, is Penelope Cruz for the 355. Yeah. Who actually shows some sort of arc in that movie, and Bing Bing Fan, Bing Bing Fan doesn't show up in the 355 as much as some of the other characters do, and I'm talking about Jessica Chastain and Lupita Nyong'o.
Lupita Nyong'o.
Yes, Lupita Nyong'o. Both of whom I think have worst performances. And I think Jessica Chastain, she's the one who just came off an Oscar, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, she won for The Eyes of Tammy Faye for Best Actress.
Right,
Yes.
for just last year. So, here she is doing an action film, and I'm sorry, but she's not good in it. She's not as convincing as Bing Fan is doing martial arts.
Right.
So, hey, at least I got that from Bing Fan. Penelope Cruz shows some arc, but Lupita Nyong'o, sorry, but she falls in and out of a British accent all the way through the movie. So, Penelope Cruz did not deserve it.
I have not seen the 355. I trust that Penelope Cruz is awesome in it, as she always is in anything that she does.
She's all right. She's, I'm not going to say she's awesome, but she's all right. She's always great to look at.
I mean, I guess in fairness, one's limit of awesomeness will have to be outmatched by the quality of the script, or in this case, lack thereof.
Yeah.
In terms of undeserved nominations, the thing is, like with a lot of the acting nominations, say for the few that we've talked about, a lot of the acting nominations I'm personally not comfortable with. I think like the big ones being Tom Hanks. Here's the thing: Tom Hanks is not good in Pinocchio. He's not good in Elvis, but it's not because he doesn't try. He does, and that's because Tom Hanks is a professional. And also, Tom Hanks is a great actor. I was just reminded of that as an example. Watched a film that he did 10 years ago called Captain Phillips. My first time seeing it in a long while. It was nice to see it again. And it actually contains some of the best work I've ever seen Tom Hanks do. In particular, the very end, his very last scene is like some of the best acting I've seen him do, probably in his entire career, which is saying a lot. Because he's given one terrific performance after another. Whenever he's in something and he's not particularly good in it, it's not because he isn't trying. It's because he's being cast because of who he is, rather than being the right actor for the right role.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And that's it's. Casting directors have to be a little more cautious.
Yes.
About choosing people who are liked. I mean, it's great that it's great that actors are liked. It's great that if somebody has a great personality and relates well to an audience and everything, but is that person the right choice for that particular role?
Right.
It's always a balancing act, because you could have you could choose Tom Hanks, who's maybe a great person to everybody on the set and everything like that, and maybe in the wrong role, or you can choose someone who's a great actor in the role but he's lousy to everybody, on the set. It's the unfortunate balancing act. I mean, you wish you could have both, but many times you can't, and that's why there's so many Hollywood stories.
That's true.
Well, okay, that does it for this edition of Mediatrocities, and I don't know about you, but I feel, but I enjoyed this.
This is fun. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that we were able to get this off our chests, and I hope to have in the future. I'll be working on shorter versions of Mediatrocities, so those will show up. I'm deciding right now as to what format I want to do. I'm thinking about the possibility of doing it is either as YouTube or possibly even as a Substack, where I could do a a vocal podcast along with a written portion on it. Audience,
Oh, yeah.
I will let you know. Is follow on Mediatrocities, and I will let you know how I progress. But Tyler Pistorius, thank you so much.
Boogaloo Ojeda, thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much, and thank you all out there, my friends, for listening and watching, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.